Are we being held back? We might be. After all, Saturn is making a semisquare to the true north node. My name is Archie Dunlop. This is Talking Astrology with Archie, and it is Friday, July the 31st, 2026. In this video, I will be looking at the broad astrological picture today, the last day of July, and I will be putting particular emphasis on Saturn Semisquare, the North Node. And having done that, I will be going through the 12 signs, and I will finish the video with an I Ching reading. So let's start off by looking at the broad astrological picture. So here is a chart for today, set for noon New York time on Friday, July the 31st. Don't forget to like and subscribe if appropriate. So as far as what is going on today, well, it's not a hugely eventful day in an astrological sense. Now, I have to be careful saying that because geopolitically, there's always stuff happening, and there might be some major geopolitical event, and you might then say, well, yeah, but I said it was going to be a quiet day. Well, in theory, it's going to be a quiet day for us as individuals. I'm just looking at what are the main aspects today, and it's not a huge amount happening. It's certainly not like the beginning of a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we had all sorts of stuff going on, but at least in theory, things have calmed down a little. And so turning to this chart, the moon is at 1 degree Pisces at noon New York time. So the moon moves into Pisces at London time. It moves into Pisces at 14 minutes past 1 in the afternoon, which is 14 minutes past 8 in the morning in New York, which is 14 minutes past 5 in the morning if you're in California. If you're in Europe or Africa, then early mid-afternoon, the moon will move into Pisces. If you're in Asia, it will be later in the day. If you're in Australia or New Zealand, it might not be till right at the end of the day or even into tomorrow that the moon moves into Pisces. So the question is, what does the moon do in Pisces? Indeed, what does it do just before it goes into Pisces? One thing it does do is it makes a conjunction to the North Node. So the moon in very, very late Aquarius conjuncts the North Node. Now, if you're in the Americas, that happens pretty early in the day. And this conjunction may be significant because we've just had the North Node going into Aquarius, and with the moon making the conjunction to the North Node, well, that is perhaps you could say the first lunar conjunction with an Aquarius North Node, and so that might be the first time it occurs to us, hey, the North Node has changed. It's no longer in Pisces. And, with the North Node in Aquarius, the way forward is to be detached to an extent. You don't have to be overly emotional. Try to be logical. The North Node is a sign that is, ruled. Sorry, the North Node is a point that is ruled by Saturn. And so there might be this sort of moment of just being aware that we can be detached. We don't have to take things so seriously, especially on an emotional level. And then the moon changes sign. And the moon moves into Pisces, moves from a Saturn-ruled sign to a Jupiter-ruled sign. And so, moon in Pisces, it's watery, it's emotional, and it means that we've got a second planet in a water sign. We did just have Mercury in Cancer. So Mercury was the only planet in a water sign, but now it's joined by the Moon, and over the next few days, the Moon will start to make a trine aspect to Mercury. And the Moon, having moved into Pisces, will make a sextile to Chiron straight away, because Chiron is at 0 degrees 52 Taurus, and then it will move on to make a square to Uranus. And so, Moon sextile Chiron is quite a gentle aspect. It's just a sextile. And when you think about Pisces, it is a sensitive and perhaps compassionate sign. And so maybe with Moon sextile Chiron, this can be a day when we can pick up on what other people are feeling and perhaps pick up on other people's wounds. Maybe we have an opportunity to be sort of healing in a sort of a gentle kind of way. Of course, when I say healing, I don't mean that in a medical sense. I mean, it's more about sort of maybe psychological or spiritual healing, just being pleasant and understanding. And then the Moon moves on and it does make a square to Uranus. So this Moon square Uranus aspect, we're not going to feel it until late in the day or even into tomorrow. But as the Moon applies to Uranus, I think we will start to feel it, and it just could stir things up. And when you think about Moon square Uranus, you might think of getting annoyed about something quickly. That is Moon in Pisces. Moon in Pisces can, at least on an emotional level, act quickly. And so that is acting quickly in response to maybe some kind of provocation or something we see that we don't like the look of. It seems strange, it seems out of place, it might even seem disturbing, and so we want to respond to it. Or it could work the other way. It might be something we do that is rather unusual, and it gets a response, but what kind of response does it get? And so what I've just gone through are really the main exact aspects taking place over the course of the day. I mean, that's just the exact aspects. I mean, there are other things going on, but it underlines the point that if you look at the week as a whole, the activity was really packed into the beginning. We had the full moon, we had Sun opposition Pluto, Sun making a sextile to Uranus, and okay, Sun sextile Uranus, Sun conjunct Jupiter. We had all of that. I mean, many of these aspects are still there, but they're just not exact anymore. So we've got Sun Jupiter conjunction. That's still very much operational. We got Venus sextile Mars, so Sun Jupiter conjunction. It is a powerful aspect. It's only 2 degrees out. It's only less than 2 degrees between the Sun and Jupiter. So there remains the enthusiasm of the Sun-Jupiter conjunction. It might be a bit of a crazy enthusiasm. Could sometimes be a destructive enthusiasm. You could say that Jupiter is still combust, and so we might want to take things too far, or rather some people might want to take things too far. But that combustion is starting to dissipate. After all, the Sun is moving away from Jupiter, and also Venus is still square Mars. Venus is still quite closely square Mars, and that's because Venus and Mars move at approximately the same kind of speed. I mean, Venus is moving faster than Mars, but it's not like Venus is suddenly going to leave Mars in the dust. And so Venus and Mars are still within a degree of each other. And as I've been saying on previous videos, Venus and Mars can be about attraction and repulsion and how people get on with each other. There is a difference between Mars and Gemini and Venus in Virgo. Venus in Virgo, all things being equal, is perhaps more sensible, wanting things to be done in a particular way. Yet Mars in Gemini can be just a bit too chaotic and a bit too changeable for Venus's liking. So perhaps bear that in mind if you're trying to negotiate any particular relationship. And if you are in a relationship, maybe you ask yourself, are you Venus or are you Mars? And are you representing the Venus energy or the Mars energy? And, that might make a difference. And so that's the picture. If we set the chart for New York, I'm just about to talk about Saturn Semisquare, the North Node. But if we were to set the chart for Sydney, Australia, the moon is at 24 Aquarius at noon. So if you're in Australia, then, or New Zealand or East Asia, then the moon is in Aquarius all day long, and the moon is applying to a conjunction of North Node. So I talked about the moon conjunct North Node, and maybe if you are in Australasia and East Asia, you have a chance to perhaps appreciate that moon conjunct the North Node more. It's not in the middle of the night. It's very much present in the last part of the day, and so you might get an idea about what that North Node is all about, and the fact that it is the right way forward to have a certain amount of objectivity. It's not all about ourselves. It's not all about our own egos. We have to kind of get a broader view if we want to really make the most of that conjunction between the moon and the North Node. And then there is the heliocentric picture. There it is. And from a heliocentric view, the Earth is still conjunct Pluto, in the same way that the Sun is still opposition Pluto geocentrically, and Jupiter is of course involved. And in fact, we have a situation where Jupiter is making an, let's get this right, Jupiter's making an opposition to the Earth-Pluto midpoint. So the Earth-Pluto midpoint, the Earth-Pluto is about wanting to create change, wanting things to be better, wanting to create a transformation. And Jupiter on the Earth-Pluto midpoint is really making it pressing. This is the way forward. We're not happy with the status quo. We want to overthrow this status quo, and maybe we don't care, what we do, what we do, how we do it. The change we're looking for needs to be enacted, and it just doesn't matter how we do it. So there could be something quite extreme about Jupiter being opposition the Earth-Pluto conjunction. But there is a fortunate side to it, and sometimes things have to be made better. We should not be happy with second best. If we want to push things further, maybe we can, but we just need to make sure that we don't take things too far. And now I just wanted to look at the Saturn node semisquare, and I regard it as being important, the whole Saturn node cycle. Maybe one reason I'm into the Saturn node cycle is because I myself have an exact conjunction between Saturn and the South Node in Aquarius. It's really exact, and perhaps it's a problem, but I'm not going to talk about myself here. But maybe that explains why I'm interested in this semisquare between the Saturn and node. So here is the chart for today, Friday. You can see that the node looks like it's at 2949 Aquarius, Saturn at 1444 Aries. Let's just do a listing of that, so we can. There's a listing. So yes, the true node is at 2949 Aquarius. Saturn is at 1444 Aquarius. So Saturn and a true node are only 5 arc minutes apart. This listing just gives us a reminder that the mean node is at 0 degrees 58 Pisces. So if you're looking at the mean node, you might be wondering, what is all this stuff about the node being in Aquarius? But but I like to use the true node rather than the mean node. So what exactly is it about? So it sounds heavy, and it does. Hold on, let me just go back. Yeah, it does sound a little bit heavy, and it's perhaps is about the past, and it might well be about being held back, because if you're talking about the nodes, the North Node is, the way forward. It's where we should be going, and we've got the North Node in Aquarius, and the South Node is about the past and how we relate to the past. So this is something that all of us are trying to negotiate. We're trying to negotiate the way forward that is right for us. And we always have choices, and sometimes the choices we see, the fork in the road. It might seem that it doesn't matter which fork we take, but if you're thinking about things in terms of the North and the South Node, there is probably a right decision and a wrong decision. It might not seem apparent at the time. Now, if we could completely understand ourselves, if we had a complete awareness, then we wouldn't. Well, obviously, we'd never make the wrong decision. But in practice, we do often make the wrong decision. In practice, we often are tempted to go down the road of the South Node just because it's easiest. We feel more comfortable with it. And so with Saturn making a semi-square to the nodal axis, well, if you're into karma, I don't like to use the word karma in these videos. It's not that I don't believe in reincarnation. I don't know whether I do believe in reincarnation. Whether or not I believe in reincarnation kind of depends on my mood. But both Saturn and the nodes, they are linked, with the past and the consequences of making the wrong decision. And so with Saturn on the North Node, we might feel that it's just difficult. It's just difficult to do the right thing. Even if we kind of deep down know what the right thing to do is, we still get caught up. And with Saturn in Aries, we want to be able to act. That's what we want to do. We want to be able to act, do something constructive, do something positive, but we are being held back. And I think that is a way of thinking about this. And with the North Node moving into Aquarius, Aquarius is a Saturn ruled sign. So I think that for many of us, it is a time when our decisions really matter. And that might be an important feature of this. We all of us have decisions to make. Should I do this or should I do that? And perhaps for all of us, these decisions are starting to become thick and fast with the North Node hitting, making the semi-square to Saturn. And so I don't think that it's necessarily easy. Now, I should say also that there is a view that the North Node and the South Node is just an axis. It's just represents an axis connected with contacts with other people. It needn't be about karma. The cosmobiology approach to astrology, the midpoints, the Uranian school. That's how they see the node, as being about connections. And so if you've got at the moment Saturn Semisquare the nodal axis, it's all a bit slow. It may for some of us seem that it's difficult to make connections, and connections may be disappointing. We might want to change the world. There might be something upsetting us. We get through to people, and the people we get through to, they are just reading from a script. They're looking after themselves. They're not giving us what we want. So contacts, okay, not necessarily with people we know well or our friends, but just contacts in general. We just feel that just something's missing. We're not being given everything, and perhaps we're holding something back as well. So yeah, I mean, that is something of a problem, and we can look at this in terms of the 90-degree dial to give us a better idea of how it's working. So 90-degree dial. Remember, on a 90-degree dial, conjunctions. This is a 360-degree dial, so let's just switch it around to a 90-degree dial. So remember, on a 90-degree dial, conjunctions, squares, and oppositions are all shown as conjunctions, whereas semisquares and sesquiquadrates are shown as oppositions. So let's put the dial on. Where's Saturn gone? Saturn is there. So if we put the pointer on Saturn, we can see that the North Node is opposition Saturn. In fact, it shows the North and South Node as being in the same place. So on a 90-degree dial, two things are in opposition with each other. The North Node and the South Node are opposition one another. So if they're opposition one another, they'll be shown as a conjunction on the dial. And so we can look at some of the midpoints that Saturn and a node are on. And so, for example, Saturn and the node are on the Mars-Jupiter midpoint and the Venus-Jupiter midpoint. There's Mars, there's Jupiter. So having Saturn on the Mars-Jupiter midpoint, and the node on the Mars midpoint, we do feel held back. Mars, Jupiter, there are things we want to do. We want to really get on with it. And it's just not easy. And that's one of the reasons why we might feel held back. And if we look at the midpoint structure of Mars, Mars is almost on the Saturn node midpoint, and Mars is actually moving away from the Saturn node midpoint. But over the last couple of days, Mars has been on the Saturn node midpoint, and if we look at the dial for Jupiter, Jupiter likewise is actually moving. Jupiter is actually moving towards the Saturn node midpoint. It's not quite there yet. So that just does say something about how we're feeling at the moment, and also if we take the nodes as other people, it just does feel really not entirely satisfactory. And I'm wondering if there is a certain tendency here with the Saturn and the nodes making this semisquare to sort of look back at the past. We might find that the past is it's just easier than the present, and we can sort of romanticize about the past, but really we should be looking at the future. I was thinking of Lindsey Graham's funeral, everyone going to Lindsey Graham's funeral, and all the sort of eulogies and so forth. And this is his death taking place at the time of a Saturn square North Node. I mean, he perhaps is someone from the past, representing a particular approach to American foreign policy, a gung-ho approach in terms of, for example, the Middle East and Ukraine. America can always be in control, in charge. It can use its military, and so Lindsey Graham's funeral was, a way of sort of, looking back. There's the death of Lindsey Graham, And so this Saturn node aspect was just starting to form as he died, the Saturn node semisquare, and it's exact at the time of his funeral. So yeah, looking back, and that may also say something about what happens when you form a government while Saturn is semisquare the North Node. I mean, we've just had Andy Burnham becoming British Prime Minister, and here you had Saturn on. This is a rough time when he became Prime Minister. I've gone for 12:15 in the afternoon at July the 20th. Maybe it was, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes either side. But Saturn was moving to the semisquare of the node, and and if you look at what Andy Burnham was saying, he was being quite nostalgic about the 1970s, looking back to the 1970s. This is the way forward, to go back, and that might be how Saturn semisquare North Node works. Or I don't know, Peru. We've just had a new president in Peru, Keiko Fujimori. So she was sworn in just a couple of days ago, and of course, some people in Peru, not that I really know anything about Peru, might be nostalgic about her father, Alberto Fujimori, who, he was pretty corrupt, wasn't he? And he spent some time in prison. So, back to the past, Fujimori, his daughter, is president, and she's sworn in while Saturn is semisquare the North Node. So, those are just a few thoughts about the nodes. I think I think the semisquare North Node is important, and in terms of your own decisions, try to think about the future, and don't be afraid of the future. Okay, you could say North Node is in Aquarius. This is the way forward. One has to an extent embrace technology and even AI, and don't be afraid of it. But of course, with Saturn semisquare the North Node, there is a lot of fear, and that is perhaps what Saturn is about, and what the Saturn semisquare North Node is about. So anyway, I think that's something we should be considering. And now I want to turn to the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Friday, July the 31st, 2026. Aries. It's possibly a time for reflection. There has been a lot of activity recently, and you might have developed some awareness of what can be achieved easily, and what might be more difficult. And, right now, maybe it's just a time when you don't have to be constantly striving. The full moon is over, at least in the immediate phase of it. The full moon, of course, does last for a bit of time. You could argue that the full moon lasts at least until the next new moon, which I think is something like August the 12th. But you've got a lot to think about, and I think that if you can just reflect a little, I think that would be a good idea. But you maintain your optimism. That is very much the case. You're still very much aware that things have changed, and I think that things have changed in your favor. And you can see that there really are many opportunities for action, but at the same time you are now very aware of what might be holding you back. Being held back, is perhaps a theme of not just today, but this sort of period, at the end of July and moving into August. And so, what might exactly be holding you back? Now, one thing that has happened quite recently is that Saturn has moved into your sign. When it happened in February, and with Saturn moving through your sign, you perhaps have become sort of aware of some of the things which might have been restricting your freedom of action, and now the Saturn is making a semi-square to the North Node, that Saturn Semisquare the North Node, I think it's going to have an impact on all of us. But you, Aries, might be taking some things seriously, and perhaps too seriously, with Saturn Semisquare the North Node. I mean, a North Node, you could argue, represents where you should be going, and the North Node is, of course, now in Aquarius. At least a North Node is in Aquarius, and so it is a time, Aries, to be maybe thinking about your role in the grand scheme of things. And maybe we're talking about society and how you can impact society, and perhaps, Aries, you don't want to have an impact. You'd just rather let things run at their own pace. And this Saturn Semisquare North Node, in a strange way, it could actually be a call for action. A call for collective action. Not today, but in general, you have to think about how you can have an influence. If something bothers you, then you need to say something about it, particularly if something is bothering you that affects other people. And it's not just your problem, your particular issue. If it's something about your community, society at large, it's not right, you feel it's not right, then maybe that should bother you. I mean, you could say that Saturn Semisquare North Node has a certain sort of political nature. I mean, I'm not saying you have to go into politics or anything like that, but you shouldn't just see things in your own terms. Although, Aries, it might be easiest to just look at things from your own perspective. It's just less complicated, of course. And yet, Aries likes to be beholden to no one. You're making your own decisions. You can see things just in your own terms, and that is very much the nature of being an Aries. Especially now that you've got the Sun and Jupiter still making a conjunction in Leo. It's a very self-focused conjunction. Not necessarily in a bad way, and you can think about what you can do, what you can achieve, and even sort of glorying in your own abilities and your own power. But that's not quite enough. If you've got power, the question is, what do you do with it? And Aries, you have the capacity somewhere to be able to use that power to have an influence on society. And that perhaps takes us back to this Saturn Semisquare, the Saturn Semisquare the North Node. I mean, and Saturn, is about responsibility in Aries, and it might be about uneasy responsibility, something that you just don't want to be doing. You don't feel you should be having to do it, but it's something that perhaps can't entirely be avoided, and it just may be a time when something at the very least needs to be said, explaining your irritation or your even your sense of outrage. I think that is okay, even if that is quite disruptive. I mean, there is a square between the Moon and Uranus developing, because the Moon moves into Pisces today, and when the Moon moves into Pisces, it starts to make a square to Uranus, and that Moon square Uranus just might encourage you to really do something, say something, which may not be entirely to everyone's taste, but sometimes just some things just have to be said. Now, we still have a square between Venus and Mars. So Venus is to 23 degrees Virgo, and Mars is at 22 degrees Gemini. So what I said about Venus and Mars, still applies. It might feel that there is, an element of tension there when it comes to dealing with people. I mean, Venus can be representative of the other person, the fact that other people, or particular other people, they like to do things in a particular way, and maybe you should respect that. And if a relationship is important to you, you perhaps need to respect how someone is leading their life, and the things that they regard as being important, even if you regard it as being quite trivial. On the other hand, Venus in Virgo, could be representative of someone just wanting to do something by the book. It might not even be a person. It just could represent administrative process, and administrative process should sometimes be questioned. And so if people or organizations are just doing things because it is straightforward, because they're just following rules, they're following the line of least resistance, that perhaps should be challenged. And that is a way in which Venus and Mars might work. You being able to, Venus Mars square might work. You seeing that things are being done in a maybe quite robotic way, in a sort of an unthinking way, even an unfeeling way. And so if you want to challenge what someone is doing, if you want to challenge what an organization or a company is doing, okay, it might have been the way they always do it. If you want to challenge, then now might actually be a good time to be doing it. But you do have to be subtle, understand what is the best approach. I think you can be subtle. I mean, the moon has now moved into Pisces, or is moving into Pisces, and so with the moon moving into Pisces, you can sort of look at the problem of influence, how you can have an impact, and sort of realize that there are many ways of achieving your goals, and you don't necessarily have to shout or make a big fuss about something, but that's not an excuse for inaction. And it may be the case, that the moon, while the moon is moving through Pisces, that you're just considering your options, and in a day or two's time, when the moon moves into Aries, or perhaps that sort of relates to next week, when very least when the moon is out of Pisces, then you might have a chance to really have an impact. Taurus, the moon is changing sign, and with the moon changing sign, yes, it's moving from Aquarius into Pisces, and this sign change just might make things just a bit easier, less pressure, because while the moon was in Aquarius, that was basically in the sign opposite the sun. So although the full moon was a day or two ago, that the influence of that full moon, the immediate influence was still very much there, because the definition of a full moon is when the sun and the moon are opposition one another, and you could take that to mean being in opposite signs. And so when the moon moves out of Aquarius and into Pisces, that's no longer the case, and that might take the pressure off. You've got the message, you get it, you see it, and with the moon moving into Pisces, you can perhaps be a little more relaxed. The moon is okay. The moon is making a square to Uranus, but that that needn't necessarily have a huge impact on you, at least for the moment. And with the moon moving into Pisces, I think you can be sort of more relaxed, and you can see what is available, and this might say something about how you relate to other people, and you might feel that it's a good time to be socializing. I mean, why not? You can be sociable. You don't have to do everything that is super important, feeling that always matters. You've got to be thinking about your ambitions, what you have to achieve right now. You get it. I mean, the full moon was about your ambitions. I mean, I think it or at least it could have been, what you were trying to achieve. Might have related to your work or your career, or just something that you were working on which was important to you. And maybe, but now that it's Friday, the pressure is starting to ease, and as you move into the weekend, you can afford to be more relaxed. But that doesn't mean to say that you have to, or rather, it doesn't mean to say that you can just go with the flow entirely, especially when it comes to other people. And it might be that you notice that some of your connections with other people are a little bit uneasy, and you might have your doubts. You might have your doubts about, for example, someone's motivations, or why someone is doing something, or someone's attitude. And it might be doubts almost of a moral nature, wondering what someone is really like, and are they actually doing things for the best reasons. And so it's important not to take anyone at face value, and just consider alternatives, and consider perhaps darker alternatives. And this kind of feeds back to the fact that there is a square between Venus and Mars. I mean, there is still a square between Venus and Mars, which has been going on for some time, the last few days. Venus in Virgo, Venus is your ruler. So as it's square Mars, that can mean that you don't get on with everyone, and you can feel the friction, and you can feel the friction in terms of what is being said. You perhaps wonder why someone says what they do, and I think it's a good idea to really listen to what you're being told, what people are suggesting, and try to think under the surface. And it might be that people give things away through their words and through what they say. They might be revealing maybe the kind of person they really are. And I'm not necessarily talking about people really well, people you have some kind of close relationship with. It's just people in general, and you have to question their priorities. Some people have a priority which is maybe quite base. It might, for example, be money. It may relate to your money. So if someone talks about your money and they seem interested, well, maybe that's a warning sign. And so, never take people's motivations at face value. People can have quite unusual and perhaps undesirable motivations. Now, the moon moving into Pisces, it does make a square to Uranus, that's true. It also makes a sextile to Chiron. And this moon sextile Chiron is, I would have said, quite a useful aspect. And it really does remind you that you have Chiron in your sign, and Chiron will stay in your sign until September. In September, it goes retrograde. I think it's September, and it goes retrograde and goes back into Aries. And so with moon sextile Chiron, you might have an opportunity to do something perhaps socially of value. And if you feel that something is wrong, then maybe that you can do something about it. And while it's true that not everyone can be trusted, and that in your social life you need a little bit of caution, there's definitely something you can do. You can make an impression, and it could be that someone needs help and no one's doing anything, and if you intervene in quite a gentle way, you can start to tune into the healing nature of your being. With Chiron moving through Taurus, at least that's one way of looking at Chiron in Taurus. I mean, Chiron, as I've said on numerous occasions, can be a disruptor. Sometimes things do need to be disrupted because they're not necessarily working out in a constructive way. Some people are complacent. They're putting up with things that really have completely outlived their useful purpose. And so with moon sextile Chiron, perhaps you can be sort of ever so gently disruptive, moving things on, suggesting that things as they are not quite right and they need to be changed. And this kind of disruption, because it's a sextile, so if it was a square or an opposition, it might be a different situation. But because it's a sextile, through a bit of ability on your part, you can just change the focus, force people to listen to you, but without being super demanding, without making yourself unpopular. So yeah, I think that you can be gently influential. Gemini. The moon is moving into Pisces, and you might say that the moon moving into Pisces perhaps makes things a little easier. With the moon in Pisces, it means that the full moon is over, at least that sort of immediate central part of the full moon. I mean, the full moons do last a bit of time. They can certainly last a couple of weeks until the next new moon. But with the moon in Pisces, you are able to perhaps return to some of your old priorities, things that you were thinking about not so long ago, maybe a few weeks ago. Perhaps you got distracted, and now you can think about what it is that you want to do, what it is that you want to achieve. And the moon in Pisces is about what you are trying to develop, how you are trying to sort of move forward with your ambitions, whatever those ambitions might be. And it is good to be ambitious, and I hope that over the last couple of years, while the North Node was in Pisces, you were able to really work out what was required of you. And I don't know, how did that work for me? What have I been doing? What was I doing while the North Node was in Pisces? Well, I was doing a YouTube channel. I was spending quite a lot of time on the YouTube channel. I mean, I started this channel in February of 2023, but maybe at the beginning of 2025, I started taking it more seriously. So that might be how it works for me, and maybe I've had some thinking to do about the YouTube channel and where I'm moving it, and I know there are other things I need to do, and I need to, it could be better, but that might be how the North Node in Pisces was working for me. And I certainly don't want to project my own experiences onto you, and I would nonetheless just ask you to think about what was going on while the North Node was in Pisces. And with a moon in Pisces, it just reminds you perhaps of the kind of thoughts you had been having over the last year or two, well, since the beginning of 2025. And additionally, it is a time to perhaps put things, into practice. And, the moon moves into Pisces at, 1:14 p.m. London time, which is, this morning if you're in the Americas. So you could say, well, it's Friday. Things are settling down in the northern hemisphere. It's the middle of the summer. There's not a great deal that needs to be done, but that's not the right approach, I don't think. With the moon in Pisces, and the moon in Pisces will be, that's where it'll stay like that for the weekend. There is stuff that needs to be done. There's there are things that really can be done, and you have the capacity to stand out and really, apply yourself to the achievement of, some of your aims. So if there's something you want to do, don't just slack off for the next couple of days. The moon is not just in Pisces, but it is also making a square to Uranus, and with moon square Uranus, it is a time to be really thinking about yourself and having an impact, and if other people aren't bothered because they've got other priorities going into the weekend, well, that's not really your issue, is it? And it's not like you have to be working, you have to be doing something which is directly related to your ambitions. If everyone is slacking off, do you have to slack off too? Well, you don't. And so on Friday, I would suggest that you just keep going, and that you really think, what more can you do? Because I do think that there is a lot that you can do, even if other people aren't bothered. Now, in the process, some people actually might be bothered. I mean, Mars is still making a square to Venus, and so if you are totally caught up in your own aims and your own goals, some people might be upset. They might think that you're just being too extreme, or you're perhaps ignoring them. But maybe that just can't be helped. Because I think it is a time, Gemini, to be thinking about yourself, and also making it very clear about who you are, and what you're about, and what is important to you. And right now, Gemini, I think that you're very good at communicating your fundamental purpose to a wider audience. Now, not all of your wider audience might appreciate what you have to say, but it doesn't matter. You are connected, and you're connected to everything. And if you feel that something is important, Gemini, then it probably is important, and you should probably really do what you can to make it happen. Cancer. The moon is changing sign. It is moving out of Aquarius and into Pisces. And this sign change for you, I think, is quite welcome. So the moon changes sign. I make it at 14 minutes past 1 in the afternoon, London time. So that means the moon moves into Pisces this morning if you're in Australia or New Zealand. A bit later in the afternoon on today if you're in continental Europe or Africa, but it's getting there. If you're in Australia or New Zealand, okay, it might not be till late this evening or into tomorrow that the moon changes sign, but it's certainly getting there. And at the very least, the moon is moving further and further away from the opposition to the sun. And of course, the definition of a full moon is, moon opposition sun. So when you see the moon exactly opposition the sun, that's an exact full moon. And so as the moon moves away from the opposition of the sun, the full moon gets weaker, it's not such a big issue. And when the moon changes sign, when it's no longer in the opposite sign to the sun, that really does create something of a change. And the moon, just before it leaves Aquarius, it does make a conjunction to the North Node. And I should say something about that before I talk about the moon in Pisces. So when the moon makes a conjunction to a North Node, whenever that might be just a reminder that something has changed. And the moon conjunct the North Node, or at least indeed as the moon applies to a conjunction of a North Node, it just might feel that you are aware that something has changed and that something is perhaps more complicated than you and everyone else has appreciated. But it's nothing like you have to do. It's nothing you have to do right now. It's not some sort of immediate issue. You have to drop everything and sort it out. It's just a gentle awareness that something has changed. It's not straightforward, and it's something on your to-do list. But if then the moon changes sign, it moves into Pisces, and suddenly you just feel more relaxed. Things are just more straightforward, and you can start to you can think about the new moon, and you can think about the full moon, and you can think, well, what was that all about? And you can perhaps reflect on what that full moon was doing and how it occurred to you. And it's also a time when you can liberate yourself. There are certain things that have been maybe holding you back, and it was perhaps a little bit difficult, a little bit complicated, and you had to take things seriously. But now you can float free to a greater extent, and just see what is possible with the moon moving into Pisces. And the moon, as it moves through early Pisces, it makes a sextile to Chiron. It also makes a square to Uranus, and that sextile to Chiron might allow you to tune into your individual approach and think about what it is that makes you different and apart from everyone else. Not apart from everyone else in a sort of a lonely sense, but more that you've got something different to offer, and it might just relate to your broader purpose, why you are here. And so that moon sextile Chiron can just be an aspect that makes you think about how you can make things better, perhaps for other people, and that might be what Chiron in Taurus is about. But it's still about your individuality. It is about being someone different, and not just another person, someone who can just follow the crowd. It is different. It is quite unique. And if you want to be heard, then you can be heard. You don't have to just fit in. And maybe there's something you've got to say. You feel it's important. Then the moon does make a square to Uranus, and moon square Uranus is it's potentially disruptive. I still think that moon in Pisces is an easy place for the moon to be in. And I'm saying it in a relative sense. It's because the moon is no longer in Aquarius. It's no longer opposition the sun. And so that is a relief. But you've still got to negotiate that moon square Uranus at some stage. Okay, it might not be an issue until tomorrow. But, moon square Uranus, it just might be that something occurs to you. You kind of realize something, and it could have been, emotional wheels turning, and you were trying to make sense of something, and it didn't make complete sense. And then suddenly with moon square Uranus, it just might feel Cancer, but you suddenly get it. It makes sense. And the moment it makes sense, you'll know what needs to be done, and perhaps what needs to be said. And so that perhaps links with moon sextile Chiron, moon square Uranus. Yeah, you get something, and it's an insight, and once you have that insight, it kind of can't be taken back. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. Leo. The Sun is still making a conjunction to Jupiter. This does have to be pointed out, because I regard the Sun Jupiter conjunction as something potentially fortunate. As I've been saying, there's always a problem with Jupiter, because Jupiter can bring very high expectations. It has a reputation for being the planet of luck, and so with the Sun conjunct Jupiter, it is lucky if you have, for example, been reading or watching your monthly horoscope or your weekly horoscope. I would guess that the astrologer has been highlighting this conjunction between the Sun and Jupiter, certainly in terms of describing the Leo experience, and probably has been fairly positive about it. And yeah, I think that is right. I mean, that's absolutely acceptable, because Jupiter is a fortunate planet. But you just have to be aware that Jupiter can be the planet of disappointment, and the reason Jupiter can be the planet of disappointment is because of those expectations. Because you think it's going to be good news, and that is the trap that astrologers can fall into. When I first started doing my astrology readings in the 1980s, they were always written. I always did written readings, and I would sort of remember, there was this, I'd have a section with transits, and I'd look at someone's chart, and I'd see Jupiter conjuncting something or making a trine. Even a trine. A trine is just not such a powerful aspect as a conjunction, and I would try to be positive. I would say, well, this is great. this is going to happen, and so forth. And I hadn't been studying astrology for that long then, and it's a mistake, because so often Jupiter doesn't deliver, and there is the question about why Jupiter doesn't deliver, and it may be the case that when you notice a good aspect happening, in the same way that when you notice a bad aspect happening, as soon as you notice it, you kind of take away its power. It's the power to do good, and sometimes it's power to do bad. It can be the case with a Saturn transit. You see a Saturn transit. You've been worrying about a Saturn transit for months, even years. When it happens, nothing happens, and that's because you maybe have just taken away its power by just looking at this Saturn transit all the time, and so that might be a good reason to really focus on one's Saturn transits and get worried about them. It's almost like the worry can just prevent them causing maximum damage. But it also applies to Jupiter, and if you are a Leo and you're thinking, Jupiter's in Leo, what's it going to do? I'm waiting. When is the good luck going to come my way? Well, you might be waiting a long time, because Jupiter does not like that kind of attitude. So you need to see good fortune, in as many different ways as possible, and you've also got to think about your own actions. If you put yourself in a position where something can work, then you are sort of increasing your chances of being able to benefit from Jupiter. So now the Sun and Jupiter's Sun is over 2 degrees, or nearly 2 degrees, 1.5 degrees from the conjunction to Jupiter. So it's separating. So in theory, the benefic and fortunate power of Jupiter in terms of your Sun is starting to wane, But it doesn't mean to say that you just need to give up on it. Just because you're moving into the weekend doesn't mean that nothing can happen. I think that you can make things happen, and you just try to create as many possibilities as possible, and don't get obsessed. And that might be the best way of dealing with it. This Jupiter. I've got my sun at 8 degrees Gemini. So I'm thinking, oh, Jupiter's about to sextile my sun. Perhaps I shouldn't have noticed that Jupiter was about to sextile my sun, because by noticing it, I prevented the event from happening. Anyway, I'm sort of skeptically optimistic about Jupiter moving towards this sextile. But as far as you're concerned, it is good that the fact that Jupiter is still conjunct your sun, is still conjunct your sun, and don't forget, I say your sun. Of course, you may be looking at this from different angles. This might be if you're looking at it from a sun in Leo perspective, that would be kind of your sun, but it might be about Jupiter rising, and regardless of, Jupiter rising. I mean, you'd have Jupiter kind of rising if you had your ascendant was Leo. So really don't allow yourself to be complacent, and just think that you're able to create possibilities, but that does require, I think, a bit of effort on your part, and don't forget, Jupiter is moving through Leo for a long time, until July of next year. So if you feel that you missed an opportunity, don't worry. The opportunity will almost certainly come back. So that's a good reason to be positive, and also to think about your own power, your own ability to create real change. That is something that you can do, and you shouldn't you shouldn't judge things just on the basis of what has happened in the past. Just because things have been difficult in the past, just because you've been held back in the past, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be held back in the future. And one of the themes of this video is a semisquare between Saturn and the North Node, and Saturn is making this difficult aspect, and the North Node has obviously just gone back into Aquarius. Saturn has just gone retrograde, so it's a bit of an ongoing feature, this Saturn semisquare, the North Node, and it might say something about other people and your various connections. And the North Node, don't forget, is in your opposite sign, and Saturn is ruler of Aquarius, which is your opposite sign. So I think there is a relationship aspect potentially to Saturn semisquare the North Node, and it could be that you might feel, Leo, that you can't do everything you want because you have to deal with certain other people. You have to perhaps fit in. The group, the crowd has expectations. They're moving you in one way, you want to go the other way, but it's difficult. And if things don't work out, there might be a tendency, Leo, to blame other people. You had it all sorted out, but it was just the environment and how people were behaving, that just spoilt things. And so that could be how you experience this sort of being held back. And it's therefore important that you take responsibility. It's really important that you take responsibility. You realize that you can make things happen, and you can create change. You can create change in other people through just the power of your personality, and that might be how this Sun-Jupiter conjunction is working. You might think that the Sun-Jupiter conjunction is just about luck from the outside, and you just got to sort of wait for it to happen. But the Sun-Jupiter conjunction may just be about how you present yourself. And so if you feel that the position is not ideal, the Sun-Jupiter conjunction does allow you to project yourself, in a way that is very powerful, that cannot be ignored. And so maybe, Leo, you can change your own luck through a belief in yourself and an ability to generally project your personality and also your desires. Virgo. Moon is moving out of Aquarius and into Pisces. And so that does change the emphasis to an extent. With the moon moving into Pisces, that would possibly put the impact on, or put the emphasis on the other person. It might be about you thinking about relationships, how people relate, how you relate, and additionally, moon moving into Pisces, it does sort of bring the full moon to a close. I mean, the full moons last very often until the next new moon, but it brings the immediate first phase of the full moon to an end. And perhaps with the moon in Pisces, moon moving into Pisces, things might seem, at least to begin with, just easier. And you can be thinking about the other, what other people are doing, and that's a good idea. And Moon is also moving into a water sign. So with Moon moving into a water sign, I think that you can be afford to be more sensitive, and I think that you're going to have a better understanding of what people are like, and what is motivating them, and maybe it just puts less pressure on you in terms of what needs to be done. You can hopefully have some trust in people to do the right thing. Now, the moon in Pisces does make a couple of aspects. It does make a sextile to Chiron, and then it makes a square to Uranus. So moon square Uranus is potentially quite an important aspect, because it happens at the same time as we've got Venus square Mars. And so you've got Mars and Uranus both in Gemini, both in a high profile sector of your chart. Mars and Uranus together might represent your ambitions, what it is that you're trying to move forward with. And so with moon square Uranus, it could be a bit of irritation there, as you move into the weekend, feeling that having to deal with other people is at odds with what actually you want to do. And what you want to do could be symbolized as Uranus in Gemini. You want to be a disruptor. That doesn't sound very Virgoan, but I think you do. You know that something needs to change, and maybe you're not entirely happy about the fact that it is the weekend coming up. You'd prefer to be in the thick of things, but just because you are or appear to be disrupted, it doesn't mean that it's the end of the world. People have a contribution to make. People do things that you perhaps hadn't planned for, but it's perhaps something you need to just understand what's going on. And if you're told something that you don't like the sound of, then try to work out what's going on. Try to work out how you might be able to use what you're told. It might just be a question of listening to outside advice. And then we got Venus still square Mars, and I regard this Venus square Mars as a continuously good aspect, provided you take it seriously. I mean, Venus, of course, it's a square. It doesn't sound good, does it? But I think that, with Venus in Virgo, that is about you. That's about what you are, really projecting. Venus is actually about to go double Virgo. When I say double Virgo, I mean that I think over the weekend Venus will go into sidereal Virgo, go into the signs that are used in Vedic astrology, and so Venus will be in Virgo in the east and in the west as well. So maybe that's something to look forward to. Maybe that's something I'll mention when I do the horoscopes for the weekend. But for the moment, we've got this Venus square Mars, and I think that this Venus square Mars, it allows you on one hand to be quite sympathetic. You can come over as someone who is warm and friendly, and you can show some real understanding. But with Venus square Mars, you haven't forgotten your fundamental purpose. There are things you want to do, there are things you want to achieve, and that continues through into the weekend. And in order to make the most of it all, going back to the moon in Pisces, just remember that you perhaps don't have to do things entirely on your own. And even if you want to do things on your own, people have an impact, and that impact, might at first seem disruptive, but if you give people a chance, you never know. You never know what might happen. Okay, you might think that it's going to be negative, but it's going to be about you being held back. I mean, being held back, it is to an extent a theme of Friday. It's not like you're necessarily being held back, but you're certainly aware of how you could be held back. Perhaps if you regard things as being just too serious, and you just concentrate on things at a surface level, if you just say, oh well, there is all these things that just need to be done, and it's difficult, it's just not going to be straightforward, and you exaggerate the problems in front of you, then that might cause a few difficulties. But you don't have to do everything at once. Maybe there are just a couple of things that need to be sorted out, and from then on, you can really start to move forward, and you can gather pace, and all the while, Virgo, you know how it's all working. You just know how it's all unfolding, and I think you have a good understanding right now of how the world is changing, and how you can use those changes for your own purposes. And so it doesn't look too bad, provided you get your priorities right, and you do have to think that it is a social world. I mean, you look at the chart in front of you, you will notice about the chart, particularly now that the moon has gone into Pisces, that all of the planets are above this horizon. I mean, it's not really a horizon necessarily, particularly if you're looking at looking at things from a perspective of your sun sign. But if you're looking at it from a perspective of your ascendant, for sure, most things are above the horizon. All these planets on one side of the chart, and so you could say there's a lack of balance, but it does mean that things going on out there in the world are having an impact on you. I mean, you are slowly being able to ground things, ever since Venus moved into Virgo. But you can't completely distance yourself from what's happening out there in the real world. And with the moon moving into Pisces, I think that there are certain people who you do have to consider. Libra. Moon is changing signs, and it's sort of starts the day in Aquarius, ends the day in Pisces, and as it changes signs, the moon makes a conjunction to the North Node. So, this conjunction to the North Node in itself is not so important because, the moon makes a conjunction to the North Node every month. But this is the first conjunction between the moon and the North Node between the moon and the North Node in Aquarius for a long time, for the best part of 20 years. And now you're going to get familiar with it, because now every time the moon conjuncts the North Node, of course it will always be in Aquarius, and it will be like that until the beginning of 2028. And so the moon conjunct the North Node just does remind you of a few things. Importantly, it reminds you that you've got to have self-respect. In particular, you have got to respect who you are and what you can do, and you've got to be able to sort of differentiate between what you can do and what other people can do. There are some abilities which are just general. Maybe everyone can do them to an extent. They're not in themselves particularly spectacular, but there are other things which you really do very, very well. And those things you need to really hold on to. And, it doesn't matter how things change. There's always technology to worry about. You might think that you have a set of skills that is being made obsolete by AI. I mean, that can apply to everything, can't it? It might be that AI is becoming something of a truism. Even if you're involved in manual work, well, in the end, you're going to have robots and so forth. So, every single human endeavor could be made irrelevant by AI and robotics. But, it does become a truism. And things, in some respects, take longer than expected. And so there are still things that, transcend technology, transcend obsolescence. And if you do something well, that's what matters, and you deserve appreciation, and you need to start by appreciating yourself, and that might be how the moon conjunct the North Node is operating. Really thinking about what does make you unique, and then the moon having made the conjunction of the North Node, it moves into Pisces, and with the moon moving into Pisces, that's a time to be perhaps thinking about what you need to do to make things stick. So you can be aware that you've got something to offer, but it might seem just a little bit fragile. That you can just lose it. You can fall out of practice maybe, and maybe with a North Node in Pisces, it's a time to be thinking about practice. Perhaps something needs to be worked on again and again. Maybe we're dealing with something you learned to do in the past, maybe the distant past, you'd forgotten how to do it. And with the moon in Pisces, not just on Friday, but into the weekend, maybe that is a good way of using it. And looking at Venus, which is your ruler, of course. Venus is still obviously in Virgo. In fact, Venus is about to change signs in the Vedic system, and I'll be talking about that when I do my horoscopes for the weekend, I think. And so that means perhaps you get a double dose of Virgo. Venus will, because Venus is in Leo in the Vedic system. Certainly, if you use Valari Ayanamsha, Venus is in Leo, but in the Vedic system, it's about to move into Virgo. And of course, it's been in Virgo in the Western astrology for some time. So there is perhaps a double dose of Virgo, and it is a time when you are noticing things, more than usual. That's perhaps not what Libra really wants to do. Perhaps you notice too much, and you're noticing the imperfections in things. Libra is of course the sign of the balance. You want balance. You want to feel that you are in harmony with your environment, and so if you notice too much, well, that can just put you out of balance, and you have to perhaps recognize that things can't be perfect, and you shouldn't allow anyone to upset your balance. Venus is still making a square to Mars. This square to Mars is separating. It's not as strong as it used to be, but you're moving into the weekend, and with the weekend, there might be certain people that you have no choice. You have to deal with them. You have to associate with them, and it might not always sort of work well. So perhaps you should be thinking about your diary and who you're planning to meet over the next couple of days, because not every meeting is necessarily going to work out. And if you've had an argument or a disagreement with someone in the past with Venus still square Mars, then it might it might not work out. And so you perhaps you've got to be tough, and you've got to be prepared, at least in a social sense, to take control. If you do show some control, you show some initiative, then you'd be surprised at the impact. I think you'd actually have quite a powerful impact. People would actually take you seriously, and your decisions about what is the right thing to do, where are the right places to go, should be listened to. So I don't know if you're responsible for family outings over the next couple of days, what your family is doing, going to different places. You do have an opinion, and if you have a bad feeling about somewhere, which you might, or you might have a bad feeling about a group of people, or a bad feeling about a social event, then just be open about your bad feelings, because your bad feelings are telling you something important. It's not that they're necessarily a forewarning of disaster, but why do something if it's not going to work out? And if you do think that something's not going to work, then I'm pretty confident that you will have understood the situation correctly. Scorpio. Don't forget, Scorpio, that the Sun is still conjunct Jupiter. I just have to say that, because I think that the Sun Jupiter conjunction in Leo, it's a great aspect. It's an aspect that can really push you along. It's fortunate, and so if there's anything you want to do, anything you feel that has still not been achieved, as we move into Friday, as we move into the end of a week, then just keep going. Keep going until the last opportunity. Is there a last opportunity? Okay, probably not, because Jupiter does stay in Leo until July of next year. But with this Sun Jupiter conjunction, I just think it's a real signature of success. Now, don't be disappointed if there's no opportunity for success. And these readings, I try to look at things from different angles, but I do try to be optimistic, believe it or not. And so Scorpio, really try to see things through, as far as you can, and also, don't forget other responsibilities. There is a conjunction between the Moon and the North Node today. Okay, it might be quite early today if you're in the Americas, but the Moon will be in late Aquarius. The North Node is in late Aquarius. At least the true North Node is in late Aquarius, and so the Moon conjunct the North Node gives you an idea about what it means to be secure, what it means to be grounded. It's all about what the sign Aquarius means to you. And yeah, it's in contrast to Leo. Leo is a very high-profile sign for you. Leo, Aquarius is at the roots of the matter, and it could be that if you can address the meaning of Moon conjunct North Node, then you can take full advantage of this continuing conjunction between the Sun and Jupiter, because North Node and the North Node is in an opposite sign to Sun and Jupiter. So there's perhaps, with the Moon conjunct North Node, there's something at a root level that needs to be dealt with. You need to make sure that the foundations of the matter are sorted out. That is the right direction to move in. So you sort those foundations out, and then just everything else sort of flows naturally. And so today, Scorpio, I think that you can sort of move forward with power and confidence, and you don't have to stop until you have achieved whatever it is you feel you need to achieve, or at least you can achieve. And what the Moon, having made that conjunction of a North Node, it moves into Pisces, and the Moon in Pisces is it's a water sign, because there isn't much water at the moment, or there hasn't been. It's just we've just had Mercury in Cancer, but having the Moon moving into Pisces, it does create a little more emotion. And for most Scorpios, that is a good thing. I mean, obviously, because Scorpio is a water sign, and Moon in Pisces provides a little more flexibility, and I'm thinking particularly emotional flexibility. Things are not so constrained, and you can see what is possible, and you can also really develop quite a good understanding of what other people are doing, and what other people are going through. Because when the Moon moves into Pisces, it makes a sextile to Chiron, and so with Moon sextile Chiron, maybe you have the capacity to, cheer people up. You can be quite encouraging if you want to be. Some people might be, stuck in their ways. They might think everything is hopeless, there's no point, and so on. But you can provide an alternative view. And, when you want to be Scorpio right now, I do believe that you have the capacity for really great positivity. Yeah, you can be positive, and you can transmit this positivity. Okay, you might have to try a little bit, but if you just make an effort, you perhaps listen to what people are saying, you listen to their hopes and their fears, and then you can kind of feed it all back to them in a way that sounds good. And yeah, you have the capacity to cheer people up, but in quite a sort of a powerful, intense, scorpionic way. Sagittarius. With the Moon moving through, or moving into Pisces, that might have the impact of slowing things down. So we've had the full moon, and this full moon, I think, was quite a powerful full moon. And it was powerful for you because it was tied up with Jupiter. The full moon was conjunct Jupiter, and it provided you with opportunities. You could see what was possible, but it could at the same time have been quite exhausting. And with the Moon moving into Pisces on today, Friday, it kind of seems right. It's a run up to the weekend, and Moon in Pisces is kind of saying, well, okay, you've done what you can do. You've been successful up to a point. At least you've been successful in terms of having particular realizations. But now with Moon moving into Pisces, it just might be just a time when you want to get off the merry-go-round of life, and just pause and reflect. And so that's certainly a way it might feel. Now, that does take you through the weekend, and or at least most of a weekend. Okay, the moon will eventually move into Aries, but perhaps that's how you should be thinking. There's nothing that you should absolutely be obliged to do. And don't allow obligations to be forced onto you. It's just enough to just calm down, just do what you feel is right, and just don't take on too much. Though the moon does make a square to Uranus, and as the day progresses, the moon moves closer and closer to that square to Uranus, and that moon square Uranus might seem to be a bit of a contradiction. There's moon in Pisces, trying to calm things down, and then Uranus can be quite an unstable force. It might represent the instability of other people, the fact that people can do strange things. They can do things that you really hadn't anticipated, you hadn't expected. They might be late, they might be early, they might not show up, they might show up with no warning, they might say things you didn't expect. And so these are all reasons to disrupt your peace of mind, to just cause just unnecessary distractions. But it needn't be like that. I think the key point is to be kind of relaxed. So if you're truly relaxed and something happens that you weren't expecting, well, does it matter? Let people be. Let people do strange things. Let people make unexpected announcements. Let people be chaotic. It's not necessarily your problem. And so that sort of hands-off approach, may certainly have an advantage, and that's certainly one view of Friday and maybe Saturday as well. Now, if Sagittarius, there's something that you are very concerned about, if you have a feeling of almost obsession, you feel that you really want to do something, then I think you can, and it might be quite powerful. That you might just feel that there's something that just still really does absolutely need to be done, and you can't entirely relax, and you are perhaps at the same time aware of just something that is maybe holding you back. And being held back is a theme of this video. And it's the fact that the Saturn is still quite close to, but I mean, in fact, it's very close to a semi-square, with the North Node, and this semi-square to the North Node might be about just you feeling you want to do something, maybe of a creative nature, but it just doesn't feel right, and you just feel that you're not entirely able to fire on all cylinders. And so the question would be what exactly is going on, and it might just be that you're taking something just a little too seriously. You put yourself at the center of things. You've said to yourself that it's all about you and your particular perspective, and if you're not able to be at the center of things, well, it's not going to work. But how do you get to the center of things? And there's perhaps a danger here of sort of over-analysis, and at the same time thinking that you do need to be in control, and also perhaps having expectations that are simply too high. And and while all this is happening, of course, Jupiter remains conjunct the Sun, and so Jupiter conjunct the Sun, you could say that Jupiter is still combust. So yeah, okay, the Sun is going to stay close to Jupiter for quite a time. Okay, when I say quite a time, for the next I don't know, nearly a week, Jupiter will be theoretically combust. But just because the Sun is close to Jupiter doesn't mean that everything needs to stop. And the combustion is going to weaken. So if you are feeling sort of held back, if that Saturn Semisquare, the North Node, just makes you think that you can't quite get it together, that you don't have enough control. Maybe you're just being actually too much of a perfectionist. You want to be in complete control, or it's not worth the effort. But I think that that obsession is perhaps going to sort of calm down, and I think in the end it's going to work. But you shouldn't take too seriously temporary frustrations. You should consider that those frustrations might, to an extent, just be in your mind. And but as I've said, at the beginning of this piece, the priority right now is just to calm down, not to take anything too seriously. And if you can sort of relax over the next day or two, I think that would be the right approach. Capricorn. One aspect that I do want to talk about is a semisquare between Saturn and the North Node. So, as you know, you have got Saturn in Saturn is in Aries at the moment, and of course Saturn is ruler of Capricorn, and Saturn has recently gone retrograde, so Saturn is not moving very quickly. I mean, it's still really stationary retrograde, and Saturn is making actually quite a close 45-degree aspect to the node. So, there's the North Node at 29 degrees, 48 degrees Aquarius, Saturn is 1444 Aries. So, within a few arc minutes of each other. And with the Saturn conjunct the nodal axis, it's worth thinking about. It's worth thinking about what perhaps you should be doing, where you should be going. That is a way in which we can look at the North Node. The North Node is in Aquarius. I've talked about the North Node being in Aquarius before, but quite recently. And for a Capricorn, when the North Node is in Aquarius, it's perhaps asking you to be in a way quite down to earth, particularly when it comes to sort of money and resources. Don't make things more complicated than they actually are. And with the North Node making a semisquare to Saturn at the moment, and when I say at the moment, I'm not just talking about today. I'm talking about the times we're at right now, maybe sort of end of July, moving into August, and it might be that you do feel held back by the concept of resources. Do you have enough? And resources, they can be about money. It can be about things, and it's something that you shouldn't perhaps have to worry about. And I'm not saying there are any financial problems. It's not really like that. It's perhaps about attitude as well. Even if you have quite a lot of money, and if you've got enough money in the bank, still the financial issue may be weighing in on you, and it may be taking up a fair amount of your time. And with the South Node in Leo, there is a danger perhaps of taking something too seriously, making something more complicated than it has to be, and that could hold you back. And so these complications may not just be about money, they just may be about just the way things are organized, and the way people are organized, and the way people are interacting, and it just does feel more complicated than it should be. And as a result, it could be just a bit, undermining. And so it just might be difficult to, entirely relax. And, the question is, well, what do you do about it? I mean, I don't think there's necessarily anything you have to do about it. But I think having an attitude of just wanting to make things as simple and straightforward as possible, getting down to the basics, and North Node is in Aquarius. With the North Node in Aquarius, it could be that there are certain things that you need to sort of detach yourself from. If you are in a situation where your emotions and your ego is just completely tied up with a complex situation, well, you could get stuck. But if you can develop a sense of detachment, I think that that could well be quite liberating. But this is something of a relatively general nature. It's not just about today. And as far as the specifics of today, Friday, is concerned, the moon is moving into Pisces. Okay, the moon first having made a conjunction to the North Node, and so it may be, if you're awake and around at the time of that conjunction to the North Node, which is quite early in the day. Certainly, if you're in the Americas, that moon North Node conjunction is at it's kind of in the middle of the night. Well, not quite the middle of the night, so that's an exaggeration. It's at 7:53 in the morning if you're in New York, or 4:53 in the morning if you're in California. That's certainly something to be thinking about. But with the moon moving into Pisces, the moon works well in Pisces, and additionally, it's a sign that the full moon is largely over. The moon is no longer in the opposite sign to the sun, because the sun is in Leo. The opposite sign to the sun is in Aquarius. The moon is out of Aquarius, and that just might give you room to breathe, room to think. And when you look around you, having got over the full moon, you're starting to think about what is possible, what you would like to do, and you might sort of notice that something is slightly out of order. And you notice that something is out of order. It's quite suddenly. Maybe it's been out of order for a long time, but you hadn't really noticed it. Now you do notice it. And with that moon square Uranus, if we want to be positive about it, it's about just taking action. Taking action to just resolve something. And it really shouldn't take very long to resolve. And it's not just about the details. It's also about how you relate to everyone around you, and how you talk. And you can certainly be difficult. I mean, you can you can be quite saturnine if you want to be. I mean, after all, you're a Capricorn. Saturn is your ruler. But if you want to be warm and friendly and inclusive Capricorn, it's going to be really easy. It might take a little bit of effort, but not much effort. And so if you want to put people at their ease just through what you say, how you're communicating, perhaps focusing on the positives, focusing on what brings people together, what people have in common. So if you can do all of that, if you want to do all of that, it's your choice. You can, and I think that overall your ability to communicate in a relatively harmonious way, is pretty good. Even though the moon is making a square to Uranus. Okay, with moon square Uranus, you have the capacity to really stir things up if you want to be. If you want to be difficult, sure, you can be difficult with moon square Uranus, but maybe you just want a quiet day. Aquarius. the moon is moving out of Aquarius and into Pisces. And so to an extent, it kind of depends on where you are. If you're in, Australia or New Zealand, you've got Aquarius. Sorry, you've got the moon in Aquarius, all day. If you're in California, then the moon will move into Aquarius really, really early on. That will be, I don't know, 5:14 in the morning or something like that. So it does depend to an extent. But while the moon is in Aquarius, the full moon is in a way still operational, because the moon is in your sign and it's opposition the sun. I mean, it's opposition the sun because it's in the sign opposition, because you've got the moon in Aquarius. Leo is a sign opposition Aquarius, and so that may say something certainly about the beginning of the day, or even the whole day if you're in Australia or New Zealand. So there might be still some immediate full moon issues to deal with. What's important to you, how you relate to other people, and so on. But then the moon moves into Pisces, and moon moving into Pisces, maybe it doesn't matter what sign it's moving into. The fact is, the full moon is past peak, and you can start to think about other things, and it just might mean that some of the pressure just goes, and just could be as simple as that. But with the moon moving into Pisces, it might also be or relate to some of your insights at the time of the full moon. Things might have occurred to you yesterday or the day before, relating to you, other people, how you deal with other people, who has the power, who has the control. And with moon in Pisces, the financial side of things might start to manifest. At the very least, you could have thoughts about how you and others relate to money, and where is the flow of money, who is giving the money out, who's at the receiving end of another person's generosity. All of that kind of thing might occur to you. And when the moon in Pisces, it does move on, and it does make a square to Uranus. So moon square Uranus could be a realization about money. You perhaps hadn't wanted to think about money, but perhaps something happens, or you just have a thought, and you're thinking, well, this is not right. This perhaps needs to be changed, and you might then feel that you do need to assert yourself. And so if you want to raise financial issues, you certainly can, although it might not be entirely straightforward. Perhaps people don't want to talk about money when you talk about money, and they have to be they're defensive, or perhaps you could be defensive. So the question is, do you want to raise those kind of issues? If you are going to talk about money, then I think you've got to be able to sort of deal with the consequences. But it's not just about money. I think that today, if you want to be, you can be, fairly friendly and reasonable, and particularly if you stay away from financial topics, you can really communicate, in fact, extremely well, and you can show yourself to be sympathetic, to be understanding, and you'll kind of just know what to say. You'll know what people want to hear. And because of that, you actually have the opportunity to put people at their ease. And if people are at their ease, then you can ask the question, not just how you can help them, but maybe they can help you as well. The Sun is still conjunct Jupiter, and with the Sun conjunct Jupiter, that may talk about maybe another person's generosity. I'm not thinking necessarily about financial generosity, maybe emotional generosity. I mean, I think that some people are there for you. And with this Sun conjunct Jupiter, it's not a time to be underestimating people, particularly if they are, very close to you, because it is a good aspect, the Sun conjunct Jupiter. It's particularly good for the other person because the Sun rules Leo, your opposite sign, and so Sun conjunct Jupiter, this might represent a situation where someone else is on good form, someone else may be more generous than usual. They might also be sort of larger than life, and maybe that's not something you entirely appreciate. But I think you need to, continue to give other people a chance. And really, that was one of the messages of the full moon that we had a couple of days ago. Pisces. Pisces, you have recently experienced the North Node moving out of your sign. I don't know whether you felt that was of immediate significance. I think with the North Node moving out of your sign, it might have been the case that it might be the case now that perhaps there's a little bit less pressure on you. You've understood the lessons of the North Node in Pisces, and now you can, I think, look after yourself better. And with the Moon moving into Pisces, that perhaps really drives the point home. So with Moon moving into Pisces, you continue to be able to look after yourself, and you have a good sense of who you are, and you shouldn't allow anything to ruffle your feathers. You've got it sorted out, and you've worked out what it is that you want to do, and you can align yourself correctly. Now, the Moon in Pisces does make a square to Uranus, and this Moon square Uranus, at least on the face of it, does seem rather disruptive. Uranus is in Gemini. Uranus is in an angular house. It's in a mutable sign, and so Moon square Uranus could raise some questions, and it may perhaps encourage you to think about how something needs to be changed. So Moon in Pisces, for sure, you're in a good position. You're feeling good about yourself, but at the same time, with Moon square Uranus, you're aware that not everything can necessarily stay the same. You have a perception that something might have run its course, and that might be something to do with your home. So your home might take up a lot of your time, or your family. It just could be something like that, and you can't necessarily ignore it. So you might have an insight, Pisces, that something isn't good enough, that something needs to be addressed, and your first impulse might be to panic, to feel that you don't have the resources, but you very much have the resources. You can do it, and additionally, Pisces, your ability to create change is getting better. And that sort of links to the fact that the Sun is conjunct Jupiter, so Jupiter has been combust. I mean, it's still combust. The Sun is not always a fortunate influence with that Sun-Jupiter conjunction, but the Sun is moving away from Jupiter. And as the Sun moves away from Jupiter, you have a better ability to just know how things should work, know how things should be sorted out, and in terms of disruption and domestic disruption, domestic disruption perhaps happens because something is not properly structured, and right now you have the capacity to create new structures and to create new order. And actually you can do it in a very thorough way. Once you decide that something is important, needs to be done, you can really go for it, and you can just keep going, and you just won't stop until it is absolutely how you want it to be. And while the moon is in Pisces, you can at the same time, you can go with the flow. You know how things should be, and so maybe there's almost like a good balance there between moon in Pisces, sun in Leo, Jupiter in Leo. No, I mean, it sounds completely out of order. Pisces and Leo have kind of nothing to do with each other, but it seems that you can marry the emotional flexibility of Pisces with the focus of Leo, and you can actually create for yourself, real stability, and you're able to create that stability because you understand the nature of disruption, and you understand how things could be disruptive, but maybe you can stop things being disruptive before they have a chance to have any influence. And those are my forecasts for the 12 signs. And now it's time to turn to the I Ching. So I ask the question, what is Friday going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 2, which is the receptive. You can see that it is receptive. Every line is broken, and it is pure negativity, and it's saying that we should not necessarily do anything, certainly not in an active, creative sense. And it is not a time to be initiating anything new. And we can have interesting ideas, but I don't think we should necessarily bring these ideas out into the open. We can hold on to them, we can think about them, but actually being an initiator, I don't think that is the right thing to do. And it kind of fits with the astrology. We've just had the drama of this, the drama of the full moon a day or two ago, and certainly this week was dramatic. The first few days of the week were dramatic, but the activity has sort of rapidly fallen away astrologically. Now, that doesn't mean to say that geopolitical activity has fallen away. The events astrologically, they're still having an impact. And you of course got individual charts to consider, countries of charts, charts of politicians, of nations, and so forth. But on an individual basis, for you looking at this I Ching reading, there just isn't so much going on, and I don't think you should feel pressured to really make things happen. And perhaps you can go with the flow. Now, we do have 2 moving lines here. The second line moves, and the second line is, I think, about having a trust in the natural process. So nature has its way. Things are moving in a particular direction, and it's tempting to interfere, to say, well, how is this going? Is it going to work? What are the problems? But I think it's okay if we just allow things to just unfold and just take things as they are. Don't change things. It's easy to meddle, but this is not a time for meddling. Just let things take their course, within reason. Of course, if something is clearly going in a disastrous direction, we would have to intervene. But I think in most cases, it's okay to just let things happen. And then the 6th line moves. The 6th line is quite a complicated line, and this hexagram is about the receptive. It's about not doing anything. But by the time of the 6th line, maybe this whole thing is going too far. One can be overly receptive, and sometimes one does have to intervene. And the imagery for the top line of a receptive is two dragons fighting. So one of these dragons represents potentially the forces of evil, and then the other dragon sort of represents the good, and maybe that good dragon is something we align to or we align with, but it is a struggle. So the receptiveness has gone on too far. We have to intervene. So there may be a situation where in the end we have to join the fight. I'm not talking about a literal fight, of course, but we have to make our opinions felt. And there could be an element of risk, because the I Ching tells us that this fight between the dragons is so dramatic that someone's going to get hurt mildly. Even the good dragon gets injured. And so there could be a situation where you have to intervene because it's the right thing to do. But intervention might have a cost. But is it the right thing to do? And that leads us to the second hexagram. And the second hexagram is hexagram number 4, which is youthful folly. Now, youthful folly is a hexagram clearly about making a mistake, but we just do something out of inexperience. We don't necessarily know what we're doing. It can indicate, by the way, that we have known the answer all along and we should not be consulting the I Ching. I don't know if that's right. I think if the first hexagram was youthful folly, perhaps it was something we already knew the answer. The I Ching had told us several times and we're just not listening. Or it might just be we've worked it out for ourselves. But with youthful folly, we have to be careful. In the previous hexagram, I talked about, in the end, feeling we have to initiate action. It seems to be the right thing to do, but then it could so easily go wrong because we don't know what we're doing. And so if we are tempted to go beyond what we know to be safe, then maybe we should just hold back. Maybe we just don't have the knowledge, and if we pursue the matter, we go against our better judgment, then there could be problems. And youthful folly does perhaps give this implication of punishment, of just being forced to realize that we've made a mistake. And so if you're faced with a situation where you feel you want to do something, ask yourself, do you have the knowledge? Do you have the experience? Do you really know what you're doing? And if in doubt, don't do it. And that's all I've got to say for today. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, let's get this right, sorry. If you enjoyed this video, I would be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, I'd be super grateful if you were to subscribe. If you want to buy me a coffee, there's a link in the description. And I will talk to you again tomorrow.